So this is going to be your tutorial and discussion for chapter 3 of Mice and Men. So there's a lot going on in this chapter that I want to try to bring attention to as quickly as possible. So the first thing is going to come right here at the start of the chapter, right? So basically Slim, who is like the chief of the workmen at the farm, he has a litter of puppies, and he gives one to Lenny. And there's just this little like one paragraph thing right here, one or two sentences, where he says, "I would have had to drown most of them anyways. No need to thank me about that." So what I want to point out to you here is that he's talking about the puppies. So his plan was to either give the dogs away, that way they would be useful to somebody, and somebody else would have to care for them, or drown them. And what you're meant to see here is that in this world, things that are not useful are not allowed to be kept. Okay. And that includes things like puppies, right? Because you think about all the things that you have to do when it comes to just feeding an animal. There's not a whole lot of like extra space and extra supplies for things that aren't serving some kind of purpose and pulling their own weight. So that's what he's talking about here. But it gets a little bit more complicated when we go down here to page 41 and we learn a little bit about the history between George and Lenny. So I'm going to read this piece, and this is George talking. Used to play jokes on him because he was too dumb to take care of himself, but he was too dumb even to know he had a joke played on him. I had fun, made me seem goddamn smart alongside of him. Why, he'd do any damn thing I told is. If I told him to walk over a cliff, over he'd go. That wasn't so damn much fun after a while. He never got mad about it neither. I beat the hell out of him, and he could have bust every bone in my body just with his hands, but he never even lifted a finger against me. George's voice was taking on the tone of confession. Tell you what made me stop that. One day a bunch of guys was standing around up on the Sacramento River. I was feeling pretty smart. I turns to Lenny and says, "Jump in," and he jumps. Couldn't swim a stroke. He damn near drowned before we could get him. And he was so damn nice to me for pulling him out. Clean forgot I was the one told him to jump in. Well, I ain't done nothing like that no more. So within a couple of pages of each other, Steinbeck is drawing a connection between the puppies that drowned and Lenny, who nearly drowned. So just think about what he's doing here with linking together the puppies and Lenny, okay, and use that information to make a prediction about the foreshadowing that's going to happen later on in the chapter. Okay, and then we're going to go down here to page 45, and then we're going to talk about Candy's dog again. Okay, so you remember the last chapter, we kind of touched on Candy's dog a little bit. We're gonna talk about it a little bit more this time. So Candy's dog is going to be a symbol that happens over and over and over again, and it's a symbol of what happens to things in this version of American society that aren't productive, that can't work or won't work or have outlived their usefulness or were never useful to begin with. So I'm just going to read here. This is Carlson talking. "Well, I can't stand him in here," said Carlson. "That stink hangs around even after he's gone." He walked over with his heavy-legged stride and looked down at the dog. "Got no teeth," he said. "He's all stiff with rheumatism. He ain't no good to you, Candy, and he ain't no good to himself. Why don't you just shoot him?" So this makes Candy uncomfortable because it's his dog, right? The old man squirmed uncomfortably. "Well, hell, I had him so long, had him since he was a pup. I herded sheep with him," he said proudly. "You wouldn't think it to look at him now, but he was the best damn sheepdog I ever seen." So just think about that for a second, right? So you have two people who are looking at the same creature, and one sees the best sheepdog they've ever seen. They have this emotional attachment to this dog because they've had it so long. And the other one sees one that's like stinky and suffering and has no teeth and thinks that it ought to be taken out and shot. Now, compare Candy's dog to Candy himself, right? Candy is old, can't work like he used to, even though he used to be a really good worker. But what is preventing somebody from taking Candy out and shooting him? So just be aware of kind of what's going on in the subtext here. Are they really talking about Candy's dog, or are they talking about Candy or Lenny or Curly's wife or any of the other things that are around that don't really that they're just different? They don't really pull their own weight in the same way that everybody else does. And then finally here, and the thing with Candy's dog is going to come back again. He does. They take it out and they shoot it. So really sad for Candy and his dog. But just that image, when they say, "I'm gonna, shoot the dogs in such a way that it doesn't feel any pain." Just remember that. It's going to be important later on in the story. Okay. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about is this recurring symbol of the rabbits and the farm that the men are going to live on. And I'm on page 58 here. So they want to live off the fat of the land and have rabbits, and they want to have their own farm. The rabbits are a symbol for the unattainable dream, right? So like a lot of us when we were kids, we had big dreams. Like we wanted to be a Major League Baseball player or an astronaut or a millionaire or any of those things. So we had these dreams that if we could just graduate high school, then we'll move to Florida and I'll get a job working as a mechanic at a garage somewhere and everything will be great, But then you graduate high school, but you never make the move, right? So it's the dream that is always just over this next hurdle. That's what George and Lenny are talking about when they're talking about the rabbits and owning the farm, right? If we could just get together a little bit of money, then we could buy the farm and do the rabbits. But something always pops up that keeps them from reaching that dream. Okay, so I want you to think a little bit about what your rabbits are, right? So what's the dream that you've had that you've been putting off because you're just waiting for everything to fall in order? We all have them, right? So that symbol is going to continue to be important because in this environment where men are working for little or no money or just for food and shelter, and they're bouncing between different places, there's not really a whole lot of room for long-term plans, is there? So, all right, guys, that's chapter 3, and we'll see you guys at chapter 4.